I'm joined today by Bill Scher, senior writer at Campaign for America's Future, contributing editor at Politico. Bill, we saw in 2008 how Republicans chose to talk or not to talk about George W. Bush. We are now going to see how Democrats decide to talk or not talk about President Obama and his legislative accomplishments during his 2 terms as the Democratic primary ramps up. Generally speaking, is there a simple answer to the question of how should Democrats talk about President Obama during the primaries?
I think it'll probably be a little simpler than people are making it out to be right now. But there is a degree of inherent uncertainty. You don't know exactly how the public is going to sum up Obama 12 months from now. Right now, Obama's approval is kind of right down the middle. It's in the high 40s, and traditionally people would say, well, you got to be above 50% to get reelected or to pass the torch to the next person in your party. But Obama was in high 40s through a lot of 2012 and still won reelection. So I think there's almost like a 3 to 5 point cynicism handicap that you give almost any politician these days, because nobody likes anybody. So if you're hovering around 50, you're probably going to be okay. So you don't know, based on current circumstances, will the economy continue to make gains over the next 12 months, padding Obama's numbers? Will the state of the world, get hotter or cooler over the course of the next 12 months? The Iran deal is a wild card. Syria is a wild card. So there's a lot out there that you can't, definitively say one way or the other. But I think as far as Hillary is concerned, and she's obviously the most likely Democratic nominee, she's part of the Obama administration. She has a long record of policy positions that are basically along the lines of Obama's philosophy. She can't make up a whole new character out of whole cloth. So she can't be totally different than Obama, but she will likely, at the end of the day, pick certain spots to say, look, we disagree on this thing or that thing. I'm my own person. I'm not going to be a carbon copy of the last guy.
I want to get to the kind of specifics of the Hillary situation with regard to Obama in a little bit, but I've been thinking how interesting it is that some of the harshest critiques that I think would fairly be made against President Obama come along the lines of not really restructuring the game, so to speak, out of favor for the 1%, whether it comes to prosecution of bankers, whether it comes to inequality, etc. And we could debate how much unilateral power a president has to make big changes on those things. But let's put that aside for a second. Mm-hmm. If other Democrats decide during the primary to criticize President Obama along those lines, those would be criticisms that would apply even more to whoever the ultimate Republican nominee is, more than likely, unless it's somebody like a Rand Paul, who I don't think there's any chance of it actually being. So does that make it sort of like a very a PR-friendly area to criticize President Obama? Because you can play the inequality criticism part without having to worry that the Republicans can then use it, because they're the kings of pushing policies that further inequality.
Well, no matter how successful a president is, they never solve everything.
Right.
There's always outstanding things to work on. Even George H.W. Bush, Ronald Reagan, ended his presidency, on a fairly popular note, Iran-Contra notwithstanding, but even, and he was the guy's vice president, no less. He still had to run on kinder, gentler nation. He still had to give some indication, I'm going to do things a little bit differently. The things that you didn't like about that last guy, I'm gonna fix that stuff. So
sort of like a shades of gray approach.
Right, exactly. So in the case of Obama, even though the economy is not perfect, it's not everything's fully mended, but he did get reelected because he could plausibly say, I made things better from where we came from, and where we came from was god awful, and we're still on that same sort of slow, steady, somewhat unsatisfying, but in the correct direction trajectory. And so the outstanding issues are, at minimum, wage growth. Even Republicans would say wage growth is an issue. And actually, both Hillary and the Republicans talk about a slow pace of new business startups. There's a declining rate of entrepreneurship out there that actually predates Obama. Where you put the inequality question how Republicans would treat that, I don't know. Some of them are kind of aping populist rhetoric on that subject, although obviously not adopting the policy prescriptions from the left. So those are the kind of the outstanding questions out there, and that doesn't necessarily mean you blame Obama for that, because a lot of folks say, look, that's not Obama's fault. He didn't create these problems. Things are better than where they were after he came in, but that's what's left to do. So who's got the best ideas how to solve that?
It seems more of a sort of political posturing and positioning decision. Like when I talk to other progressives that are about as progressive as I am, there actually doesn't seem to be that much disagreement about President Obama's legacy. It's one of these, listen, we can only expect so much from a president during 1 or 2 terms. What he has accomplished in terms of a strong economy, don't ask, don't tell, and many other areas is absolutely fantastic. At the same time, the sort of still quite moderate to slightly neoconservative foreign policy elements, the sort of not really doing much about the inequality, banksters 1% area, that's not good. But at the same time, what would we really expect from any sort of mainline Democratic candidate? I don't really, that's kind of the point of view for most progressives I talk to. Do you disagree with that?
Well, when I personally disagree with it too, I think as far as the left writ large, I think it's a more complicated question. I think you're speaking about one part of the broader progressive community. I think there's another part that puts Obama in a different framework.
More positive or more negative? Than
more positive. More positive.
Okay.
I mean, for example, some folks say Obama didn't overhaul the banking system. Other folks would say, look, Dodd-Frank was a re-regulation of Wall Street after a couple decades of deregulation. So he turned the ship around to the correct direction. And in FDR's day, the left said the same thing about him. You're not. Why aren't you taking over the banks?
Yeah.
Why are you keeping the system intact? But now we say, look, he did the SEC. He created a system of regulation that was non-existent before, and that's a hell of a lot better than where we were. So people might look at Obama's record, I think, in a different light, 5-10 years from now. But you are speaking about, I think, a division on the left in terms of how far we need to go to actually solve these problems. And Hillary is not gonna stake out the leftist pole in that debate. But I don't think that sentiment is so widespread that it makes it untenable for Hillary to be the nominee.
Okay, so that's kind of what I'm getting to next, which is Hillary Clinton going to be helped by her direct association with the Obama administration, or do you think she's going to be hurt in it? And I would propose the question at 2 different points: within the Democratic primary, and then if she is the Democratic nominee, within the national election against the Republican nominee.
I don't think it's a net negative. At the same time, I don't think she's going to simply say, I'm going to be like Obama, because if nothing else, she has her own record. She has her own brand. She has the ability to say, I would be different in Obama in certain respects if the situation arises. And she may want to emphasize that to a varying degree, depending on what the world looks like a year from now. But she has a hard-headed, pragmatic reputation. So if people were thinking that Obama was overly idealistic, a different critique from, the hard progressive stance, but some have that critique. If she wants to say, look, I'm a get things done kind of person, she can play up that side. If foreign policy seems to be spiraling out of control, she could say, look, I was the one who wanted to arm the Syrian rebels and Obama didn't. I would have done things in a different way. I would have treated Egypt in a different way. She has it on the record. If she wants to play that up, she can. And if nothing else, she has somewhat of a clean slate to say, I think these are the types of policy prescriptions we need now that are different than what we needed in 2008, different from what we needed in the 90s in Bill Clinton's day. We have specific wage pressures and globalization issues, different issues with Wall Street mechanisms that weren't around 20 years ago, and therefore I have different ideas to handle these problems that they don't have to be anti-Obama positions, but they just would be distinct positions of hers that she can say, look, I'm my own person.
Last thing, Bill, I never make any kind of predictions as to who will be the Democratic or Republican nominee at this point. It's just so early. Historically, we just have no idea. However, do you think the circumstances on the Democratic side are unique in a sense, such that we could say, unless something drastic happens, it's going to be Hillary?
Unless something drastic happens, it's going to be Hillary. I mean, she's beating every possible challenge on the Democratic side by 5-1. There isn't, even amongst folks who say Obama is not liberal enough, there still is a general sympathy and acceptance of Hillary. They don't necessarily, I mean, there's certain folks that see her as a tool of Wall Street, but there's lots of folks on the left that don't. So she would have to do some major mistakes. Something in the Clinton Foundation would have to, there's some real smoking gun in there. She would have to say something that would be, she had her slip-ups in 2008. It's not like you can't say it's impossible for her to make a gaffe, but it'd have to be a pretty big gaffe to unwind what she has built up. And there isn't a thing like the Iraq War, which was a big albatross for her in 2007 and 8. That's kind of old news now. People have sort of baked that into the cake with her. No one assumes she's going to be a raving neocon if she gets into the White House. So you don't have that obvious angle to take her down the way Obama had in 2008.
All right, Bill Scher, Campaign for America's Future, Politico. Thanks again, Bill.
My pleasure.